Welcome to the SEGA Lounge, a podcast dedicated to our love for all things SEGA, be it the games, the music, or the community. I'm KC. In each episode, I'll be talking to different guests and sharing their projects and their passion for SEGA. Hello everyone, welcome back to the SEGA Lounge. This is a very special episode as we are celebrating yet another big anniversary of a series that has been synonymous with SEGA since its inception. ToeJam and Earl. That's right, our funky alien duo turned 30 earlier this year, and we couldn't pass up on the chance of dedicating an entire episode to the series. In late 1991, the first game in the series, simply titled ToeJam Earl, was released in the West for the Mega Drive or Genesis. Created by Greg Johnson and Mark Vorsanger, it featured two aliens from the planet Funkotron who crash-landed on Earth and had to collect different parts of their ship, the Rapmaster rocket, in a world made up of different randomly generated levels played in isometric view. The game's style and soundtrack was fresh, and the design a bit surreal, and it also featured several pop culture references and parodies. It gained a cult following and got a sequel in 1993 titled ToeJam Earl in Panic on Funkotron, a 2D side-scrolling platformer set in the alien duo's home planet. We had to wait until 2002 to get another entry in the series in the form of ToeJam Earl 3 Mission to Earth for the original Xbox, which was presented in 3D and provided a mix between the first two games with elements of both. A fourth and final game, so far in the series, was released in 2019 after being successfully funded through Kickstarter. ToeJam Earl Back in the Groove represented a return of the series to its roots, with the formula of the original being improved upon, and the references and jokes updated, and many quality of life features included. Back in episode 24 of The Lounge, which aired in March 2015 on Radio SEGA, I had the privilege of interviewing Greg Johnson as he was promoting the Kickstarter campaign for ToeJam Earl Back in the Groove. He even mentioned how they pitched the original game to SEGA and got some laughs out of them just by explaining the setting and characters. It's a great interview, so do check it out if you're interested in learning more about the genesis of the series and even how Back in the Groove came to be. Hopefully, we can have Greg back on the show sometime soon so we can have an updated chat on the matter and discuss what the future holds for the series. But this episode is all about celebrating the history of ToeJam, Earl, and all the quirky, funky characters from Funkotron. A series so unique that it has a large following all over the world. I'm more of a recent fan myself, as I'll explain in a bit, but ToeJam Earl and the covers of both Mega Drive games are part of my memories of Sega's 16-bit console. They were everywhere, from magazines, game catalogs, and game stores. I really don't know how I never owned them as a kid. That said, 30 years later, it's time we look back at what made ToeJam Earl and their games so special to us, and take a look to the future of the series, and share our thoughts and wishes for a potential sequel to Back in the Groove. As usual in these types of episodes, I sent some questions to some of my community homies, and they recorded their answers for everyone to hear. Joining me this time, we have Brazilian PR guru Renato Almeida, one half of the SEGA guys Dan, the Mega Driver, Casey Corrigan, the editor of the upcoming ToeJam Earl's Funky Fresh Foods of Funkotron cookbook, Lewis Clark, aka Sonic Yoda from SegaDriven.com, and his girlfriend, Jenny, from Megavision's Scotty Moe, magazine content editor, and Chris Powell, co-founder and editor-in-chief, and, because it's mandatory on this, the Skill Gym Lounge, we also have the return of James Skill Gym Brown from Shenmue Dojo. I'll also be answering the same questions and sharing my own thoughts, and remember, we'd love to hear from you as well, so drop us a line on Twitter at the SEGA Lounge. My first question was, what are your earliest memories of ToeJam Earl, and which game in the series did you play first? Renato Almeida vividly remembers the cover of the original game, and I have to say, so do I, even if our experiences with the game are very different. It's just one of those boxes that I kept seeing over and over on Mega Drive catalogs and video game stores. As for Renato, it made him decide to pick it up and take it home.
The very first memory that I have with ToeJam Earl is, without a doubt, the image of the cover of the game. So I remember when I was walking into the rental shop, the video games rental store in my little city in the countryside of Sao Paulo, and I remember how colorful it was because of the characters, that big red alien and the other orange, yellow-orange like guy with the shades. So it was very, very amazing to check something so different, the awkwardness of the characters. So I had to pick up the box and check what the game was all about, So I was checking the information. I couldn't read any English at that time, but that wasn't a problem. We were used to rent games and try games and learn about the games by playing them. But I was checking the box and I saw the screenshots, and it looked like an awesome game because of the aliens, and we obviously had an idea that the game had something to do with music. So obviously, I had to rent the game, and I'm not sure if I had the opportunity to be one of the first ones to rent that game. But I remember when I took it home and I was playing with my brother, my younger brother, and we were simply fascinated. We were crazy about the game because of the vibe, because of the music, because of the whole idea of having these two aliens opening like presents and those boxes with mysterious gifts inside. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and it's obviously one of the favorite games that we played together as kids, and we still play this game to this day. So every now and then, when my brother is visiting me, I will play that game with him. The first one, the very first ToeJam Earl. It's a amazing experience. And now that I have a kid, I've been playing with him as well.
Dan, the Mega Driver, one half of the SEGA guys, while baffled by the time it's passed since the first game came out, remembers his very first time playing it quite fondly. It involved one of his school friends.
30 years. Just these anniversaries are coming thick and fast, and they really are making me feel old. So my earliest memory of ToeJam Earl is one of my school friends. He used to always find these massive bargains of old used games, whether it's from cash converters or boot sales or whatever. And one day he came to my house with the original ToeJam Earl, and I'd read about it in magazines, and I fell in love with it instantly. I just loved the whole aesthetic of it, the colour scheme, the beatbox music, the funky music, that whole beatboxing subsection that you do, the randomness of it, how it was all randomly generated, it was co-op. It was just so much fun. And I know some people say it's slow, but I really loved it. I still do love it to this day. I think it's got so much personality, and it really it really captures that feeling of the 90s. There's like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air feel about it, all distilled into this weird video game about aliens. So absolutely loved it.
Casey Corrigan is the editor of the upcoming ToeJam Earl's Funky Fresh Foods of Funkotron cookbook and a funky guitarist. Seriously, check out his fun music streams at twitch.tv/CaseyCore. Anyway, Casey associates ToeJam Earl with his cousin. Why? Check it out.
My earliest memory of playing ToeJam Earl is actually spending time with my older cousin, who I would see on holidays. He was the one in the family who had a Genesis. I had a Super Nintendo at home and an N64 after that. I didn't actually get any Sega stuff until the Dreamcast came out. That was the place to play fighting games, and I'm a big fighting game guy, so it was finally time to get one a few years into its life cycle. But before that, I only really played Genesis games with other people, primarily him. So on one Christmas, I don't remember what year it was, but we were digging through games, and I had picked out ToeJam Earl, and I distinctly remember the look on his face, and I could immediately tell he was not happy. He would have rather played a sports game or something of that nature. But I chose ToeJam, and it was very clear to me from the minute we started playing he had no idea how to play. He didn't really know what he was doing, and that's why he didn't like it. And because, I think we all know that game doesn't hold your hand. It really wants you to figure it out. So he wasn't so into that. But I fell in love with it. And it wasn't until a few years later that I played it on a emulator. And that's when I really came to love the series, and then went on and played the sequels after that.
When I invited Lewis Clark, aka Sonic Yoda of Sega Driven, to take part in this episode, and he said yes, I was expecting him to talk at length about his profound love for ToeJam Earl. What I didn't expect was this answer to the very first question.
This is the only question I can answer, because the only game in the series I've played is ToeJam Earl, the original on the Mega Drive, which I'm not a big fan of, to be honest with you. I think it's a bit of a slow, arduous game that's a little bit tedious to play. I know the goal of it is to play co-op, and unfortunately I've never really got a chance to do that, because I was just never taken aback by it. I'm more of a single player game kind of guy.
And I wasn't expecting what followed either.
But I have someone with me who is a massive fan of the series, and hopefully can answer this a lot better. This is my girlfriend Jenny. Hello.
Hello.
So I want you to answer that question. What are your earliest memories of ToeJam Earl, and which game in the series did you play first?
Oh god. So I played the original ToeJam Earl on the Sega Mega Drive. It's one of the few games I do remember we did actually have on the Mega Drive at that time, and it was the original one. I wasn't overly enamored with it, but it was one of those ones that I just kept going back to a lot.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing your experience. There's an addictive factor to the original ToeJam Earl, one I also got with Back in the Groove, if I'm being honest. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Megavision's magazine content manager Scotty Moe is up next with two different perspectives on the original game. One from his childhood and the other from his college years.
I do have a vivid memory of renting the first game at a local mom and pop store called Video Showcase, where I would later frequent for Pogs, because those were cool. I must have been 6 or 7, though, when I remember seeing the box of the first ToeJam Earl game and thinking, these guys look like they'd be buddies of Sonic with their cool demeanor, so this game must be for me, a cool kid. It was not. I was bored with it, but when I returned to the game in college with roommates, I do remember it being just a real chill, cool, kind of a brainless way to kill your Saturday afternoon, because you didn't have to really pay attention. It was a good way to just turn our brains off.
Finally, we have co-founder and editor-in-chief of Megavision's Mag, Chris Powell. I knew Chris loved the series, and here's a glimpse as to why that's the case.
My earliest memories of playing ToeJam Earl was back in the early 90s, playing with my cousin Kevin when I was around 9 or 10. He was a couple years older than me, but we grew up like brothers. I'd always play as ToeJam, and he'd always play as Earl. And I think one of the things that made us keep coming back to the game was the randomized levels. Each time we played, all the items, parts of our ship, and enemies were in all new places, and that really made it feel like a whole new experience. The music in the game was also a really big deal for us. He was always introducing me to new types of rap and hip-hop music growing up, and I remember him really loving the beats in ToeJam Earl. It wasn't until a few years later that we played the sequel, and while it was fun, we always preferred playing the original. It's a game we still like talking about whenever we get a chance to see each other, and it's still one of my favorite Genesis games of all time.
As for me, my earliest memories are of the cover of the first game, either as part of one of those catalogs that came with Mega Drive games or at game stores. I had friends who owned the game, and I did play the first one on occasion, but it never really captured me as a kid, to be honest. Much later, I got to play Panic on Funkotron, and that one was more in line with my taste in games at the time. A side-scrolling platformer with some crazy stuff that I didn't fully understand happening at every turn. I consider that to be the first game that I truly played, as I got much further into it than the first one, and I also enjoyed it more at the time. Next up, we have a question that is both mandatory in these kinds of episodes and hard to answer. Which game is your favorite? When we talk favorites in a series like this, it usually comes down to either the first one you played or what genre of games you prefer. If you think of only the first 2 titles in the series, they share the same characters, funky music and lore, but they're completely different games. The third one, Mission to Earth, was the duo's first foray into 3D on the Xbox, and finally, Back in the Groove brought them back to their roots, being very faithful to the original game. For Renato, the first one still stands out as his favorite.
Well, I did play a lot of the first one and the second one, and obviously when the new game came out, I bought it on the Switch. I was one of the backers of the Kickstarter campaign. I was one of the first ones to jump into that campaign. I wanted to bring those characters back. But without a doubt, the game that I played the most and that I have, that I'm most fond about is the first one. Because of the relationship that I ended creating with the game, it was one of the games that I was always renting with my brother. Obviously, we're always chasing co-op opportunities on the Mega Drive. And that game was a perfect choice, because we had this opportunity to try different scenarios. Since the game has the random world feature, so it's always a new game, it's always a new surprise. And obviously, I was always ToeJam. Actually, my brother was always ToeJam, and I was Big Earl. I loved to be Earl because of the way he walked, the way he behaved. So it was amazing, I really, really dig his shades, the style of the character, and the laziness, so it's one of my favorite games on the system for sure.
Yeah, I'm lazy too. Dan has experienced almost every game in the series, but which one is his favorite?
The first game is definitely my favourite. I did love ToeJam Earl, ToeJam Earl 2, that is. Panic of Funkotron was, I think it lost a little something when it moved to be a 2D scrolling platformer, because as much as it retained the great music and the great characters and the weird humans and all of that sort of stuff, it just felt a little bit more by the numbers, because it was kind of a run and gun, you're throwing jars at people. I mean, that was hilarious, but it wasn't as unique. The first game remains unique and wonderful, and it's still a game that I try and rope anyone that I can into it. I did like ToeJam Earl 3. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Very underrated. It would have been great if it got a lot more recognition, because it's still a great game in co-op. Those vast, expansive worlds really did build a lot on what made the first one great. Had a great script as well, especially with ToeJam occasionally saying things like, "You should check out my third leg." Superb stuff. But out of all the ones that I've played, definitely the very first ToeJam Earl is my favourite.
Aw, Dan, you really should play Back in the Groove. It's a very fun game to play with friends. Just ask Casey.
As to which game is my favorite, I think Back in the Groove is my favorite. I love the original as well as the third game because I'm a big fan of platformers, but being able to jump online and play the original style of gameplay with other people is so much fun. The original format of ToeJam and Earl really, it shines in multiplayer, so being able to play it online really just brings the package full circle. That's the way it's supposed to be played. Not necessarily online, but in multiplayer, preferably on the couch. But if you can do it online, it's super fun to get 4 people running around in ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove together and do a run. It's so much fun.
I actually had the pleasure of playing Back in the Groove online with Casey last year, and we had a really fun time. We were even joined by Nap, community manager of Human Nature Studios, in the ToeJam and Earl community, which was pretty great. Big shout out to Nap, by the way. Without a doubt, our most special guest in this episode, Jenny, Sonic Yoda's girlfriend, has played Back in the Groove. Is it her favorite game in the series, though?
Again, I can't really answer this because the only one I played is ToeJam and Earl, and I didn't really like it. But Jen...
Have you not played Back in the Groove?
Briefly.
Yeah, because it's...
Only around yours.
Yeah, I've got it on Steam, so we can share because of the library share. My favourite, I think, of all time has to be Panic and Funkotron. It's just, that was my favourite one. That was the one I kept going back to. I did enjoy Back in the Groove, and I haven't played the Xbox one, unfortunately, because I never had one. But yeah, I would say Panic and Funkotron.
Good choice. And the second game is also Scotty Mo's favorite too, for a very sweet reason.
In terms of what game is my favorite, probably going to be Panic on Funkotron, the second ToeJam and Earl game, because for whatever reason, my mom actually loved playing it and wasn't too bad at it either. She loved just, all the goofy characters. I remember her always laughing when we would hit the doorbell. For everybody that lived on Funkotron, you go up to their house, you hit the doorbell, and it's just this out of tune, like burr, 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 horns playing. And she thought every joke was hilarious. I think I just really enjoyed having an excuse to kind of play games longer than usual, since my mom was just as engaged in it as I was. And when Panic on Funkotron was re-released on Xbox 360, I actually brought my console home over Christmas break, and it was like we had just played the game yesterday, because I got to show her that it was, available to play again. I had no idea where my cartridge was at the time, so it was cool to be able to just load up the game and play it again. So it was really neat. And she was honestly amazed how much she remembered from the game, muscle memory, I guess, of some way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's Panic on Funkotron is going to be my favorite.
Judging by his first answer, I don't think Chris's answer to this question will be a surprise to anyone.
I have to go with the original ToeJam and Earl because I have so many great memories tied to it. One of the things we loved about the game that made it feel different was how it was a bit slower paced than most other 16-bit co-op games of the era. Even when one of us fell off a ledge, which usually meant certain death in most other games, we didn't die and had to restart the whole level. Because ToeJam and Earl's levels were essentially stacked on top of each other, you simply fall to the previous level and have to hunt for the elevator to lug you back up. It was such a cool little mechanic that made for a great couch co-op experience.
My personal favorite, having never played ToeJam and Earl 3 Mission to Earth, is actually the most recent one, Back in the Groove. Following the Kickstarter campaign and having Greg Johnson on the show made me go back to both Panic on Funkotron and the first game and gain more appreciation for both of them, and especially the original. I don't think I was able to fully understand and appreciate how cool the first game was as a kid. Back in the Groove built up on that, improved the formula, and brought online co-op to the mix, which is definitely the most fun you can have with the game.
Radio Sega's Winterfest 2021 is coming. 4 days of radio shows from your favorite in-house DJs and special guests, featuring music, banter, and prizes to be won. From Friday the 17th of December till Monday the 20th. Only on Radio Sega.
Speaking of ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove, which got funded through Kickstarter with over $500,000 pledged by over 8,800 people, wow. What are our guests' thoughts on it? Do they think it did the series justice? What would they have made differently if they had a say? On the other hand, what stood out as really positive aspects? Being such a fan of the series, it's no surprise that Renato was one of the first people to back the project. And being the legend that he is, you just know he has a story to go along with his answer to this question.
Yeah, I really loved the new game, Back in the Groove. It's a fantastic game. I was one of the first to back the game when I saw the Kickstarter campaign. I remember that even though I've been working as a PR and promoting several games from Sega. I even had the chance to promote the game ToeJam and Earl when Sega released the PS3 version and Xbox 360 version, the digital versions. Even though I was working as a PR, I remember that when the announcement came for Back in the Groove, I was between jobs. I was searching for a new agency to start my new phase of my PR career. So while I was trying to get a new job, I was taking that time to write and to collaborate with as a journalist. To collaborate with magazines and websites. So I had the chance to write a piece about the game. I had the opportunity to tell the story about the Kickstarter campaign, and I was happy enough to reach out to Greg and his team to get some of my questions answered and to be published on a Brazilian magazine called EGW, which was a Brazilian version of EGM. So it was amazing because he was obviously one of the heroes of this industry. and I had the chance to talk with him, to ask some questions, and to publish a story that I hope was able to make justice to the game. And I really, really loved the game. The opportunity to play, to go visit that universe once more with the characters that I love so much. And obviously, one of the greatest surprises was to learn that Macaulay Culkin was involved with this game, because I'm a really big fan of his work in movies and etc. But I was following his podcast as well. But to learn that he was involved with video games, it was amazing. And he couldn't be choosing a better company, to start with. So it was great to see his name on the credits and to learn that he was able to help spreading the news about ToeJam Earl. So it was amazing. And one of the things that I really liked about the gameplay is that you also have this feeling of playing several different games when you start a new game, So every experience is different. So there's this freshness that you can find on every gameplay session. So I really, really like this one. The connection that I have with the first one it's a lot stronger because of the nostalgia factor, but I really love this new approach that Greg and his team at Human Nature took to develop Back in the Groove.
So we already know Dan's answer to this. He hasn't played the game, but let's give him a chance to explain himself.
Unfortunately, I never played Back in the Groove. I've been trying to get a physical version forever. I was going to go to the Kickstarter, missed out on that, missed out on the limited run games copy. So then I was trialing eBay on and off for the last few years trying to get a physical version, but they never seem to go below £40, which is more than I'm willing to spend. I did have a chance to nick a digital version during an Xbox sale, and I think it was up for something ridiculous under £5, and I didn't. I wanted a physical version for the Switch. Really should have bit the bullet on that one because I'm still waiting to play it all these years later. One day I'll play it. In fact, next time there's an Xbox sale, I'll have a look for it, and I really must grab it.
You really must, man. It's a whole lot of fun. Sonic Yoda, not being a fan of the original or the series in general, was able to see the merits of Back in the Groove in his short time with the game.
Again, I played this very briefly. I think it is an improvement over the original formula. I like the fact that it moves a lot faster, but it is very much, just an enhanced version of that original game. But because I was never a big fan of the original formula, it didn't really do an awful lot for me.
But what about superfan Jenny? Her answer is probably the most detailed I got to this answer, and she makes some really good points.
Well, this is where I just keep talking. So it's interesting you mentioned that it felt faster, because my issue was, compared to the original, it actually felt slower.
Oh, really? Okay.
So in the original one, you see the humans coming, and you get time to react, and you kind of move away. You move fast enough to walk away, basically. Yeah. But in Back in the Groove, it feels a lot slower, so you have to move tactically to evade the humans sometimes because they're too fast. So if you're not careful, you can get cornered. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do think it was fresh enough to be interesting. But I do feel like there was just the tiny things there that was just like the movement. But also some of the original some of the original humans have made a comeback. So you have the woman in the shopping trolley, and you have the ice cream van, you have Santa. Gotta have Santa. But there's new ones which feel like they're not going to date as well. So there's a guy taking selfies with his phone. There's a chugger, a charity mugger. Yeah. That might age well, actually. Always get them. But there's one taking selfies. There's no anti-alien type things. It's not going to age as well, but it is enjoyable.
Jenny's my favorite guest by far. Sorry, everyone else. Anyway, Scotty also backed the Kickstarter, and here are his thoughts on the game.
With Back in the Groove, I was a Kickstarter backer, happy backer of that game. I was able to give it a shot with the online co-op. I actually played with fellow Mega Visionary Chris Powell. We zipped through that campaign. We were surprised how short it was, how short the main story was, but realized as soon as we finished it, how much replay value is in that game with getting all the different hats and playing as the different characters and everything. I think it captured the first game really well. But also added in snippets of Panic on Funkotron in there. I never played the third one, Mission to Earth, so I don't know. I do own that thing, but I never have actually sat down with it. But no, I think it captured the first game really well, added in stuff from Funkotron, Panic on Funkotron as well, and also maintained plenty of quality of life aspects to prevent it from dragging on a little bit like the original kind of feels like it does now. I do hope to someday try the 4-player co-op mode in ToeJam and Earl back in the groove. That would be really, really cool.
Definitely try the 4-player co-op, Scotty. It's been said already, but it's the most fun you'll have with the game. I'm starting to feel like we should get some of these people together to play 4-player co-op back in the groove. It needs to happen. And since Scotty mentioned Chris, I think his comment on ToeJam and Earl back in the groove pretty much sums up most fans' thoughts on the game.
I think Greg and the team at Human Nature Studios did a great job at delivering an experience longtime ToeJam and Earl fans can enjoy today with their families and create an entirely new generation of TJ&E fans.
I also backed the Kickstarter campaign and even got the ToeJam, Big Earl, Rapmaster Rocket figures, as well as a present and a boombox to go along with them. They've been in display on my shelf for the past few years now. The game is now a much better experience than it was when it came out, with the addition of different modes, a better online experience, and some fixes that were released as the team kept working on it. Playing online can be a bit tricky depending on the platform you're using, but overall, it's definitely the best way to enjoy the game and have fun. Grabbing 3 friends and playing the game with them is something else, and definitely something you should try at least once. I think Greg and the team at Human Nature Studios were able to make something that appeals to fans of the first game and introduces the universe of ToeJam and Earl to new people, including younger generations. I can definitely see the series having a future, which leads me into my final question. Greg Johnson, creator of the series and the Human Nature Studios team, recently asked the fans to show their interest in a sequel or a new game in the series. What do our guests think of that? Which direction do they think the series should take next? A new game in the style of ToeJam 1 and Back in the Groove? A platformer like ToeJam 2? Or something else entirely? Where would they like to see the series going forward? And is there still a place for the funky duo in today's gaming landscape? The prospect of a new game seems to be very exciting to Renato. He also has some ideas, some he would like to see, and even a reference to another Project Cross Zone game. Remember those? The Namco, Capcom, and SEGA crossover games on the 3DS? That's a throwback.
Oh yes, for sure. I'll totally be there as one of the fans supporting and backing a new Kickstarter campaign, or maybe buying, wishlisting a new game on Steam. You know, I would be able to spread the news to my friends. So for sure, I would be supporting. Buying a new copy, you know, I really think that the team has the capability and the ideas to bring more out of these characters and out of this universe. And I would be happy to see Macaulay Culkin once again collaborating and bringing crazy ideas, you know, to be associated with this game. And obviously, and why not to bring more SEGA developers from the past, you know, maybe a collaboration with another team, you know. So for sure, I would be there to support. And I'm all up to crazy ideas, you know. I really I was able to see that the team that came with Back in the Groove, that they are very talented and that they have their hearts in the right place. So they respect and they love this franchise the same as we, the fans, do. So yeah, for sure. Please, Greg, please bring more to the table. To be honest, gameplay wise, I think that it would be good to mix some of the ideas that we found throughout the series, So I would be very happy to see elements from the first game, elements from the second game, and even elements from the third game, on the Xbox. So I really like some of the ideas of the second one with all the platforming, but I really dig the whole exploration of the first game. And obviously, I really dig the characters and the development of their characters throughout their dialogue, throughout their relationship, the story. It's silly, but it's really fun. And the characters per se, they are super, super likable. And I really think that they could develop the relationship between ToeJam Earl and their families and their friends even more, So why not? Maybe mixing some of the best ideas of the entire series could be a great idea. But if they come out tomorrow and they say that they are going to create something entirely new, like a JRPG turn-based experience with ToeJam, I would be there because I love the characters, I would even love if ToeJam and Earl were part of Project Cross Zone 3 for the Switch, if being SEGA characters, it would be great to see them maybe going into new places, maybe participating and taking part on a new experience with other characters, maybe a Sonic racing game that could take them to race, maybe a puzzle game, I would be totally open and supporting because I really love those characters and I really love that universe. And of course, the most important part is the music, because we know how important the music is and we know how great the music is. So the inspiration, the ideas that they put on the table, it's always great. And I'm really sure that they would be very invested on creating some new music that would be making justice to the legacy of this franchise.
Dan wants the sequel to be a successor to ToeJam and Earl 3, with vast open worlds and more. Is it realistic to expect that, though?
So if there was going to be another entry to the ToeJam and Earl series, I honestly think something in the same vein as ToeJam and Earl 3, but bigger, more modern, more expansive. That I thought ToeJam and Earl 3 really took what the original game tried to do and just expanded on it and modernized it. And I think nearly 20 years later, something like that for ToeJam and Earl 3 would be perfect. But we're talking vast open worlds, randomly, procedurally generated voice clips, that sort of thing. It's probably outside the budget and the scope that's going to be possible for a series which is probably still a little bit niche. So if we were going to make a new one, I think it definitely has to be Back in the Groove or ToeJam and Earl 1 style, with the way that Back in the Groove looks, the way that it went about it. I think that was almost a perfect homage to how the first game was. So 100% not ToeJam and Earl 2. As I said, I love ToeJam and Earl 2, but the kind of free roaming open worldness of the original ToeJam and Earl is what I would go for.
I love Casey's idea. I don't really know how it would work, but it sure sounds like it would be fun and would please a lot of the fans of the different games.
If there was to be another game in the franchise, I would like it to be some sort of weird three-headed monster hybrid of the classic gameplay style and the third-person platformer that the series shows off in ToeJam and Earl 3 Mission to Earth. I really like the idea of doing the roguelike co-op online experience, but with a 3D environment and a camera brought behind the player character's shoulder, rather. Changing perspectives and changing to a 3D art style and going to more of a platformer while still retaining the roguelike repeating a run kind of feel, I think would be a very modern and fun take on the franchise. And obviously co-op online play is a staple of the ToeJam and Earl experience in the modern day, in my opinion. So that needs to be there.
Jenny answered the questionnaire from Human Nature Studios recently, so this topic is still very fresh in her mind.
they asked what did you think the rock thing was in Panic and Funkotron was. I thought it was a walnut. That wasn't an option. So apparently I'm just wrong about this show, this whole thing completely. I do think there is space for another ToeJam Earl game. I think they're funky, they're fresh, they're hip. There's nothing quite like it at the moment, especially if you consider like all of the indie platforms that are coming out. There's obviously still a gap for it. I would like to see them do something like they've done with Back in the Groove for ToeJam Earl 1. I would like to see them do that with Panic and Funkotron, because I feel like that game is great. The only barrier I have to playing it is when I'm playing it on PC, because it's part of the Mega Drive collection, is trying to remember which button is which in terms of ABC on It's fine if you're using like a USB Saturn pad, but if you're not, you kind of press the wrong button and use your special attack and you can't do it. But I would really like to see that again. Obviously there is still a demand for it because, as you previously said, it did raise over $500,000 by over 8,000 people, so there's a lot more people like me who want to see it.
Lewis redeemed himself at the very end by reminding me of Art Alive, the very simplistic painting software for the Mega Drive that featured ToeJam Earl stamps you could use to decorate your pieces of art.
I would also like to see more, but I would like to see a new Art Alive game with the same stamps that you had originally, because I love Art Alive, and that was like one of my childhood faves on the old Mega Drive. It is the most stupid little paint program for the system, but all the little animated stamps were really good fun, and that was like my main exposure to ToeJam Earl for God knows how long. So that's going to be my pick as well. New Art Alive, please. And if it doesn't include the same song when you draw lines, then that's a big problem, because that is, as far as I'm concerned, the song. That is the theme of drawing, as far as I'm concerned, okay?
Art Still Alive, coming soon to the Nintendo Switch. Or maybe not. Thank you for that, Lewis, and thank you, Jenny, for taking the time to participate. True to his love for Panic on Funkotron, Scotty's idea for the next game is a rehash of that formula.
I think, if they want to do another game, I would definitely be down for that. I would say now that they've taken a stab at reinventing the first one, I'd love to see a spiritual successor to Panic on Funkotron. As loved as the first one was, I feel like nostalgia really pushed Back in the Groove more than anything. But I feel like a platformer could appeal to an even wider audience, people that never even heard of ToeJam Earl or Panic on Funkotron, any of them really, in general. I think that a platformer is a little more digestible for the wider audience out there than a rogue-like alien thing.
Maybe it would appeal more to the masses. Good point. Chris, however, would love to see a new Mission to Earth style game.
While I'm a huge fan of Back in the Groove and how it builds upon what made the original ToeJam Earl so great, I'd be more interested to see a return to a 3D ToeJam Earl like Part 3 Mission to Earth. While that game had a lot of issues, modern development tools make it a lot easier to develop 3D games today than it was in the early 2000s, and I think it could make for a lot of interesting possibilities. Outside of that, I'd love to see the ToeJam Earl gang be included in more crossovers and other games. And if Sega ever gets off their butt to make a Smash-style brawler, they have to be included.
Hear that, Sega? For sure, though, ToeJam Earl are still so synonymous with Sega that we definitely need them to be in a future brawler, racer, or any type of all-stars game. As I mentioned earlier, I do see ToeJam, Big Earl, and the colorful cast of alien characters having a place in the current gaming landscape. I think the overall opinion about Back in the Groove is positive, and a good stepping stone into better things for the funky duo. That said, I'd love to see a remake of ToeJam Earl 3, or even a new take on that formula like they did with the original for Back in the Groove. An open-world 3D game sounds great. Maybe it could be set in Funkotron, so we'd have a combination of ToeJam 2 and 3, updated to modern systems and audiences. I also share Chris's wish that we get to see more ToeJam Earl in future All-Stars crossovers. Speaking of which, we've been a long time without one of those. I don't know how the rights situation is, but I don't see it being too complicated since the characters have appeared in more than one indie game. So I assume it's just a matter of Sega approaching Greg Johnson, and he'll probably work with them to make it a reality. But what do I know? All I do know is I'm looking forward to what TJ and E's next adventure will be. Hopefully something fresh and funky. It could even be a rhythm game. Yeah, the music's always been a huge part of the experience of playing ToeJam and Earl, so much so in fact that we have a bonus story by Renato Almeida.
And there's one last thing about my relationship with ToeJam and Earl, and this is it's a crazy and funny story. My brother and I, we simply loved the soundtrack of the first game. So the tunes for the elevator parts and the tunes of each of the levels, it was simply amazing, and it's still amazing to this day. But I remember that we really wanted to listen to those tracks outside of the game. So it was in a pre-internet era, and we didn't have Spotify or anything like that. So it was really, really hard to see a soundtrack for games available to purchase on stores, so like on vinyl or even CDs. So it was really, really hard. So the thing that we did was to grab like an old recorder. It was kind of a toy recorder that my brother had among his toys. And we started to record some beats and some pieces of the soundtrack to store that so we could listen to that later, So we started to producing like some sort of mixtape with the soundtrack of the game, so we could listen and enjoy even when the Mega Drive was turned off, So when we were playing with other stuff. So it was great. It was one of the first experience that we had with creating our own mixtapes back in the day. And obviously it had to be with ToeJam and Earl's soundtrack, which is amazing and I really love. So thank you so much, ToeJam and Earl, because the soundtrack of the game was an inspiration. I can tell you that.
Good times. Thanks for sharing, Renato. But wait, we were supposed to have Shenmue Dojo co-owner James Brown on the show, weren't we? Well, I thought this would be the best way to close the episode. MC Skill Jim is on the mic for a funky rap about this amazing series that turned 30 this year. He answers all the questions. Here's to many more for ToeJam and Earl.
That's right. Here we go. Yo, my name is Skill Jim, and I'm here to say on the Mega Drive is where I spend most of my days. Chilling on the CRT and relaxing so cool, and playing on a game called ToeJam and Earl. Although Sonic the Hedgehog took the #1 spot, ToeJam and Earl was still freaking hot. These funky aliens crash landed on Earth, finding rocket ship pieces on human turf. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Take the elevators to advance in the sky. Beware of all the humans, they seem pretty miffed. The best way to pass them is to pick up all the gifts. Opening the presents is a lot of fun, but beware of the rocket shoes, you'll be falling on your bum. The isometric view was very cool. I couldn't wait to play the game after school. I was ToeJam and my dad was Earl. Together we conquered it and ruled. The game is fun on any day, because there is a game mode that randomizes play. The first game will always be my best, but we still need to talk about all of the rest. ToeJam and Earl 2 again on Mega Drive, but they changed the gameplay, so I give it a 3 out of 5. Panic on Funkotron was its name. It didn't really feel quite like the same. At first I thought that this game was dumb, but the Hyperfunk Zone was still a lot of fun. It wasn't just a copy and paste, a brand new style thrown at your face. This time humans have invaded Funkotron, the alien home of our friends TJ and Big Omar. They make it their goal to capture them all and send them back to Earth before Funkotron fall. This 2D platform is still worth a go. I'm sure that some prefer it, don't you know? Then it was a decade to see our pals again, although we nearly got a Dreamcast game out of them. Shifted to the Xbox back in the day, 3D adventure platform, a lot of fun to play. We were introduced to new alien Letitia. Here, have a tissue, back down on Earth like a slam dunk. I got a final 12 of the sacred albums of funk. ToeJam Earl in all 3 dimensions. Make sure to not skip, this game deserves attention. Like Shimu, many others, the Xbox was their coffin. But suddenly one day they were back, but needed kick-started. Back in the groove, smashed through its goal. And after a few years, we got what we were told. A new ToeJam Earl game, back to the roots. With funky new stages, characters, and presents to boot.
Yo, shout out to Greg Johnson, Human Nature Studios in the house.
Constant updates and new modes to try. Greg and the team made something super fly. Perhaps not as good as the first in my opinion. Its smaller maps and many humans were annoying really. But that doesn't take away from the game that we got. If you never got around, then give it a shot. Because our favorite aliens need another continue. Let's show our support to get another sequel. I think I would love to see what they could do if they decided to do another 3D game too. 3D platformers have seen a bit of a resurgence. Wretched and Clank X Robot Crash Super Lucky be emerging. This funky franchise has a 30-year history. It's not too late to discover its story. In fact, I even got a friend to play co-op. We completed the whole thing before we even stopped. Every time out that I go to meet him, he says, yo, let's play ToeJam Earl Jam. So come and enjoy this game series now. And why don't you start with the original? I wanna thank KC for the SEGA Lounge. I have been Skill Jim, aka James Brown.
West Side, Funkotron side.
That was something else. Thank you to James, and thank you to all of our other brilliant guests. Renato, Dan, Casey, Lewis, and Jenny, Scotty, and Chris. Shout out as well to everyone who wanted to take part but couldn't due to lack of time. You know who you are. And a big thank you to you guys, our loyal listeners. Next week's episode will be our season finale, and we are once again celebrating the anniversary of a series and a character, Sonic the Hedgehog. I'll be joined by a few of my community friends to have a candid and, who knows, maybe even a bit emotional discussion about the Blue Blur and our memories and experiences with the series. I hope you guys will join us for that. Until then, have a great week, stay safe, and have fun. Bye-bye! The SEGA Lounge, hosted by me, KC, and part of Radio Sega's network of live shows and podcasts. Theme song and incidental music by OSC. Find them at opussciencecollective.bandcamp.com. Got any suggestions? Drop me an email to podcast@thesegalounge.com. Follow us on Twitter @thesegalounge and like us at facebook.com/thesegalounge. You can find previous episodes of the show by going to thesegalounge.com and wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. A Mixed On Productions podcast.